Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. Welcome to Women's Voices webinar. In this opportunity, Women in Diplomacy, a collaboration between KAICIID and the Tanenbaum Center for Interreligious Understanding. Thank you to all of you. Thank you, our panelists. Women in Diplomacy celebrates and acknowledges the UN International Day of Women in Diplomacy held each year on the 24th of June each year. Women have been playing a crucial role in global governance since the drafting and signing the United Nations Charter in 1945. But only 4 of the 100 delegates who signed the charter were women. Although since then it has been an increase in women's representations in diplomacy worldwide, there is still a long way to go to achieve women's full and equal participations in areas of decision-making and political life. Women and girls represent half of the world's populations and therefore also half of these potentials. Women brings immense benefits to diplomacy. Their leadership styles, expertise, and priorities broaden the scope of issues under considerations and equality of outcomes. Research shows that when women serve in cabinets and parliaments, they pass law and policies that are better for ordinary people, the environment, and social cohesion. More inclusive decisions are made, different voices are heard, and solutions are created. This webinar aims to bring the discussion forward by underscoring the strengths of women as peace bearers from an interfaith perspective and give attention to women who build and advocate for peace through local and governmental of diplomatic roles. To conclude, I would like to quote Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, and I wanted to mention her words in her speech this year, last month, for the celebration of International Women's in Diplomacy Day, when she said, "Without the input of half of the world populations, we cannot develop policies that work for everyone." That is why this webinar shall highlight women's grassroots peace activists who started by building peace within their own communities and eventually made their way to diplomacy or government roles. They are uniquely positioned to understand the local dynamics of the conflicts that they seek to transform. And our panelists are going to make this wonderful webinar. And I will now give a little presentation about me. I will start introducing myself. I'm Daniela Chavez. I'm from Salta, a beautiful province of the north of Argentina. And I'm currently working in the local government in charge of the Religious Affairs Office, a job that I really enjoy to do because I enjoy diversity, working with faith communities, the daily routine to talking and to sharing with them. I really love my work. I'm KAICIID alumni from 2019 international cohort. And my experience with KAICIID, it has been and after and before and after in my interfaith journey, it gave me valuable tools to do my work better. So I'm very grateful to be moderating this webinar. And now, and the most important thing, I'm pleased to be in a great company of our amazing speaker. I will introduce her. I wanted to introduce Her Excellency Ambassador Belén Alfaro Hernandez, Senior Advisor for Mediations, Preventing Diplomacy and Dialogue in the Cabinet of the Secretary of State for Foreign and Global Affairs in Madrid. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us.
Thank you.
It's really a great pleasure to having you with us. Joanna Gaspar, Coordinator of the Center of Strategic Studies and Analyst of the Diplomatic Institute of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Portugal. Joanna, thank you. Thank you for joining us. We have also Cabo Watts, Director of Interfaith Peace Building of the Center of World Relations and Diplomacy. I will now introduce Ambassador Alfaro. I would like to invite her to share with us the keynote of this webinar. Ambassador, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to participate in this webinar of KAICIID. I would like to thank KAICIID for organizing it. Spain is a member of the Council of Parties of KAICIID, and it's a very successful center in the promotion of intercultural and interreligious dialogue. And also, I'm very happy that they are promoting women and women in diplomacy and in peace processes, which is very important. Also, I would like to thank Tanenbaum, the panelists, and the participants in this webinar. Thank you very much. Currently, 2 billion people, 2,000 million people live in conflict-affected areas. The United Nations Secretary General Guterres has called for a global ceasefire. In this context, preventive diplomacy, mediation, and support to peace processes are essential for the resolution of conflicts and to avoid humanitarian crises. And in this field of peace and conflict resolution, women have much to contribute. Women have much to contribute because women make up half of the world's population. They must be involved in decision-making. Because they must be involved in decision-making where their future is decided. It's proven that when women are fully involved in decision-making, it leads to better outcomes for society as a whole. It's essential for women to participate in negotiations and peace processes, and to be part of parliaments, local governments, and national governments. Women's perspectives need to be available during peace negotiations, during ceasefires, and peace processes. Women's perspectives should be available, should be included, women's perspective, and women should be involved for processes to be inclusive, because their outcomes affect them, and because they can bring different perspectives that can be very valuable. I would like to highlight two cases, two examples. The first one was in Afghanistan, 2020, when there were negotiations between the government of the Republic of Afghanistan, and the representatives of the Taliban. And there were four Afghan women in the negotiating team of the Republic of Afghanistan. I met them. I had meetings with them several times, and there was always, they were participating. It was very giving their perspectives, and there was a core team, and there was always a woman. It was assured that even for the meetings for only 4 people, there was always a woman represented. Another example that I would like to highlight was the peace process in Colombia, and the negotiations between the government and the armed group FARC, where some women at the beginning participated as victims. So they were in the negotiating table because of they were victims, so that to make proposals in those areas in which they had been victims. But with the time, they were proposing solutions to all the different aspects, because the men that were involved in the negotiations didn't reach agreements, and they were the ones proposing solutions and mediation solutions in areas, not just in the ones that they had been directly involved as victims, but in all other areas. So their contribution was very important and very positive. So we have, there are examples. We have very good examples of women participating, and also the positive effects that this has. But we need to have more. We need to have more women involved. We need to integrate a gender perspective in conflict prevention, management, and resolution, and in peace building. There has to be meaningful participation of women in decision-making processes. It's important to ensure the protection and the respect for human rights of women and girls in conflict and post-conflict situations, and also take into account these women in the recovery measures for victims of conflict. And finally, I would like to highlight three means for the involvement of women and in decision making and for their participation in negotiations and in peace processes. So first, the networks of women and the link between different networks of women. This is a network. KAICIID is a network of women. There are other networks. It's very important to build networks of women that are willing to contribute, to participate, contributing for women in peace processes and in negotiations. The second means, I think it's important also the local level, the participation of women in local level processes, women as insider mediators in local negotiation processes. So it's very important, this local level perspective. And finally, the third means, last but not least, training. So the training of women is essential. We need more training. This is also a webinar. This is a training workshops for women in negotiation, in conflict prevention, in conflict resolution, in diplomacy. So it's essential that they are fully trained. Women from different geographical areas to have training workshops from different regions. So in this sense, I think that this webinar is very helpful for this objective and to contribute for women's participation. And I would like to thank again everybody for their participation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Your words were so meaningful, and you have given us the right framework to this. I was thinking about something that you mentioned, and I think it's the key. You mentioned gender perspective. I think it's englobe everything in governments, in local governments, and international level. We must fight in a good way, to have this gender perspective in all areas. So it can help, because it's not just, and thank you for bringing to the floor those interesting examples that you gave, that Afghanistan and Colombia, how I think is how resilient women are. We can be victims, but we change, and we became part of the solution. So thank you very much, because you have shared with us valuable information, and that you mentioned network. I think it's the key. It's very important to be connected, to share, to support each other as women, and as you say, in different parts of the world, but we are working in the same direction, and it's very important to know how we carry on these challenges. So thank you. And local level, it's so important. And the training, you have mentioned three very important things, and I would like to appreciate, to thank you. And now we are going to start with the first part of this webinar. And I wanted to know you, to the audience. We asked our excellent panelists to reflect about 3 questions that I will share now to you. And we wanted to know about the beginnings and the shift of diplomatic roles, how they did it. And the questions are, how did you begin to work at the grassroots level? How did you become involved in governmental or more national, international work? And what was the shift like? How you did your local experience inform your diplomatic role? I would like to invite first to Joanna Gaspar to join us and to start with this, telling us how it was it. Please, we are waiting for your experience.
Thank you so much, Daniela. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation. It's an honor to be here and participating at this webinar organized by KAICIID. As you might know, Portugal is honored to host the headquarters of KAICIID here in Lisbon. And we are also very honored to have one Portuguese very good diplomat, Ambassador Almeida Ribeiro, who is the Deputy Secretary General, and I take the opportunity to say hello to him here in this panel. I was listening to your introduction, Daniela, and you said so many few women signed the UN Charter in 1946. You know, if you go and look at the statistics, maybe in relative terms, compared to the number of diplomats that exist in 46 and the ones that exist now, maybe the percentage was not that low, you know, because unfortunately, women that work in diplomacy and women diplomats are not that big a number. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of my experience, and I would like to ask Elizabeth to show a very embarrassing photo of myself, and I'm the one on the left, on the right of your screen, and we are dressed with Portuguese traditional costumes. You can erase the photo now, Elizabeth. Thank you. This is to show you when my passion for peace, for promoting international peace came from. I was only 11 years old, and I was sent to Germany to represent Portugal in a summer camp with other very young children that represented their own countries as well. And we got to learn about each other's cultures and traditions and languages. And we had to dress up in our traditional costumes. We had to cook a meal of something that came from our country. We had to sing a song, dance a dance. And this was very eye-opening for me. I was 11 years old, as I tell you, and it was something, this ideal of building world peace through the relations between people was something that stuck to me. So after that, I had a very traditional path. So I decided that I wanted to study international relations, which was quite new in Portugal 30 years ago, since there weren't this was not a common study theme. My parents, for instance, would have much more preferred that I would follow something more traditional like law or economy or literature, and then I would stay put in Portugal and not move around the world. So it would be more traditional path. But I did it. I got very much involved in student unions, student movements, trying to raise awareness to international themes in Portugal. You know, 30 years ago, Portugal was only 20 years after its revolution. It's the Portuguese Revolution that opened Portugal to the rest of the world. Also, before the revolution of 1974, women could not be diplomats in Portugal. So only after 74, it will be 50 years next year, are women able to be diplomats in Portugal. So this was, you know, gaining momentum, but not really something that was common in Portuguese society to have women diplomats. But it was my ideal. And after spending 1 year in the Erasmus program in studying in France, I was sure that was what I wanted to do. And so I passed the very demanding concours to to be able to enter the Portuguese diplomatic corps. And I've been a career diplomat since 1997. And the second part of your question was, what is the shift? So how did we get here? Why did we want to do this and dedicate our lives to promote peace, to promote international peace? And what was the shift when we professionally started to doing it? And I have to tell you that the first years in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Portugal were quite defining for confirming my decision to become a diplomat. And I'll tell you why. I was first posted in dealing with European Union and Mediterranean relations. I was, as I tell you, very young. I was 22 years old when I started working at the ministry. And the meetings that I was following and I was accompanying between the countries from the South Basin of the Mediterranean and the countries from the North Basin of the Mediterranean led me to be representing Portugal in an academy, an Euromed academy for training of young diplomats. And there was a delegation from Palestine and a delegation from Israel. Everyone was sitting at the same table. Everyone was speaking. Everyone was talking in the corridors, having lunch together for a whole week. This was possible. This was not difficult. This was not strange. And this was a mark for me to see this is the path. So diplomacy, formal diplomacy, state diplomacy, this is really the way to go. It's possible. It can work. It can be a means to achieve peace, to surmount conflicts. Then afterwards, there was also an interesting experience where I represented Portugal to Yemen. Again, I was, very young and a bit afraid. How should I behave? How will I be accepted? It was so interesting the way we were received, the way we could see the impact that European Union projects were having in developing society, education, women's entrepreneurship in Yemen, the way we were received by all the biggest authorities. And me as a very young 25-year-old Portuguese Catholic was sitting at the right hand of President Saleh of Yemen. And it was a very interesting experience. And so this change from the grassroots, where I started to have this feeling that what I wanted to do with my life, and then fulfilling this kind of a dream, it proved the right choice. And I'll leave you to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you for sharing such your experience of your childhood. I think it's very important when you can, we looking back and we can recognize that moment, that important moment in our childhood. And we look at today and say, something start to happen at that time. And having the opportunity, something that already Ambassador Belen mentions, the opportunities, the training, having the opportunity to, and how difficult you mentioned with being woman, start to work in diplomacy, because I was reading and the same thing happened in Argentina, and I think in different parts of the world. Firstly, women in diplomacy were secretaries, archivists. We weren't able to take part of the negotiations, mediations, and it is changing. I think, and you are the example of that. So I want to really thank you, because it's very insightful that you share some personal remembers and to share with us. Thank you very much. Okay, Hind, now is your turn. We want to hear you. The same story. I want you to show a photo. Do you have a photo of your childhood?
No, I don't, but I can translate for you later.
Thank you.
First of all, I just really want to. I just want to tell you that KAICIID and Tanenbaum are really my favorite organizations. I still involved with them over the years, and I really learned so much from them. They've been a great supporter for our work in peace building. And so I thank you, and thank you, Daniela, for your energy here. Love your energy. I just want to start. Yes, I'm not a real diplomat like my other great colleagues. I'm honored to be with them, Joanna, Betty, and Belen in the same panels. But I'm a daughter of a diplomat, and then I start my life as a lawyer. Then I'm a professor at the university and running a peace building program there with George Mason, who I really salute them and thank them for all their support. Actually, I got appointed, all my life I've been a daughter of diplomat, and I know exactly the life of diplomat, how difficult and how meaningful can be. I want to start a little bit different here, because I was a lawyer then when the Syrian revolution started in 2011. I decided to quit my legal practice and start like really doing some work, humanitarian work for my people. I thought it's the time for me to stand with the oppressor, with the oppressed people against the oppressors. For years, I've been doing this work until I got elected to be part of the high negotiation team, where I served 2 years there in the negotiation team in Geneva. And also I was part of the legal committee for the negotiation. And I really, and this is the time when I did see that there is lots of men, lots of male colleagues, but there are not enough women in this committee. So created a legal women advisory group. It's different than our colleague in the WAB, but we've been working together very well. And this is when I started thinking about how much we need to include grassroots and civil society in the political work. Here, I want to tell you that from 2015, I've been elected. Then in 2017, I've been appointed as a deputy ambassador for the Syrian negotiation office in Geneva, where I served until September 2022. I resigned then, and I'm now continuing my work as a educator, and plus I run my own peace building organization. I just want to, I know now I have some times, but I want to tell you that I'm a very strong believer that we can't have peace without including civil societies, women group in the process. And we cannot have a sustainable peace. That's why I was thinking about successful negotiation. It could be a parallel work when we bring civil society together to do the work. So I always thought that because I'm in Geneva, New York, and DC, I could be the voice of the voiceless and bringing their voice to the table if I can bring them physically there. So what we did, we were doing some consultation with our team. We were doing more capacity building for the women and our colleagues. We've been training negotiation, mediation, public speaking. And every time we're planning, we want to be at the table. Of course, we can see the male is saying that why they are here. We needed over the years to convince them and to tell them how much it is for us important to get women more at the table. I'm going to later explain more about some work and some experience and some examples about how much was so beneficial to bring women from different faith, from different ethnic groups, Syrian, at the table in so many of those important files, very much involved with the life and the well-being of the Syrian, and how much women brought her wisdom, the knowledge at the table where other cannot bring. So I'm going to keep all this, Daniela, for the next question, right?
Yes, thank you, Hind. Thank you. You have been, you mentioned, I keep connecting everything that you was sharing, and again, it's about training and be prepared. And it was so interesting how you begin doing some humanitarian jobs. It's because you need to help your people. I think that's very valuable, because we have, I can tell until now, you can two ways to start in our journey to diplomacy: by studying, of course, which is very important to be to have a career, to study, of course, and both of you have done it. But also this grassroots, no? What happened where I live, in my community? How we can start? Because sometimes we just start thinking in the high level, and we are not able to see, okay, in my local environment, what can I start to doing? And I think hearing you both, I think we have to pay more attention in order to that. And you also mentioned that you have to convince. There was a time, and the same as mentioned Joanna, there was a time years ago that we have to convince men that our participation was necessary. Nowadays, I think it's changed. It's still a long way to go, but we are not at the time that we have to convince. We have to be more. No, we now are fighting to real equality, but not just convince. We don't have to convince anymore, but we have to go. We want to go for more. So so thank you, Hind. Thank you. We are going now to, let me see. I think we can see we have a Slido poll when our participants can share a few comments. Yes, thank you. We want to ask you, to our audience, among 1 and 4 words, what's the focus on your work? We want to, you can just type it, and we wanted to hear about you, because we have a lot of information from these two wonderful women. And I was thinking, and when I was invited to this webinar, it was challenging for me. It is challenging for me, because I work in a local government, and I asked myself, okay, how do I make that shift? How to do it? And I'm taking note of every word that you are mentioned. So I hope our audience is doing the same. So it's getting active. Okay. Youth empowerment, of course, peace, diplomacy, human rights, religious peace building. Of course, we are going to talk about this in a moment. Betterment of the world, education, studying, security, how important it is to teach, to learn. They say comunitario, I think they mentioned about community, working community, as we already talked, negotiations, communication, migrations, so important. We can build so much around that. It's very, very, thank you. You are involved in so many things, valuable things. Thank you. Okay. Then we now are going to move to our second part. And in this time, I will ask you about, and now this is very important, it's related with KAICIID and with Tanenbaum, the work that they are doing. In what ways is your religious affiliation important to the work you do as a religious pacemaker? Has it shifted as you work more at the diplomatic levels? I think you mentioned something about it, Joanna, when you was sharing your experience in that round table, being Catholic. Would you tell us a little bit more, please, about this?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Daniela. And thank you to the audience that enjoyed my presentation and my picture. So sorry to show you that, such a bad picture. Well, I have to tell you, I think religion is a very personal thing, a very personal subject. For me, I'm a Portuguese, I live in Portugal. It's a laic country, it doesn't have religion, it doesn't have a state religion. But of course, culturally, we are mostly Catholics. The way religion affects you and affects your work and the way you do your work, it's very personal as well. So you can be a Catholic, and that is fundamental on your life because of the principles that ground you, the ethic principles. But you can also be a diplomat without having a religion. So it is, one thing is not mandatory to the other, okay? So you can be a perfect peacemaker without having yourself, you're believing in a God. So I think that is very, very personal. For me, I haven't had the opportunity to negotiate any process where religion was a differential factor. In this much more able to speak about that part. But I'm going to share with you another experience that I had while I was Consul General of Portugal in London, and how religion helps you with connecting with your migrant communities, and how religion is a way to bring people together and a way to promote inter-group help, inter-communitary help. And that was really important for me. So Portuguese communities are mainly Catholic. In London, for instance, we have specific masses in Portuguese that people attend. And me sharing that with the rest of the community forged a trust, built a trust between me and the local communities that I was there to serve and to help, that probably would be more difficult to foster if they didn't see me on Sundays and I wasn't there to be approached by them directly in a very easy and a very easy way. And there was unfortunately a very, very bad accident in London when I was there. It was the fire at Grenfell Tower, where so many migrants that lived there, hundreds of migrants from all nationalities, were left without a home. I was there from the beginning because the Portuguese priest knew about that and called me at 3 a.m. So I went there immediately, and it was through the Catholic mission that we could provide help with everything because people were left with nothing, no clothes, no money, no house, no food, and it was the role that, because people are connected through that specific interest, that was important at that time. But what I think mostly is that when you share a faith, a specific faith, that may help you, first of all, ground yourself when you have to take difficult decisions in international relations and when you're negotiating. Sometimes you are put before a decision that involves your principles. and it involves your ethics. Giving you an example of a Portuguese diplomat in the Second World War. He was the Portuguese consul in Bordeaux, in France, and he wanted to help Jewish people that were escaping the Nazi regime with issuing them visa to get out of France and moving away to other countries. And when he understood what was going on, he wanted to give them visa, and the Portuguese government of that time forbade it. But he went against the orders of his government because he had this moral, ethical principle that he thought was more important than the orders that he was receiving from his own government. Unfortunately, he was let go from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and he had 8 children. They all died in the biggest poverty you can imagine. So he was only rehabilitated in the 80s. But this was one case where, and this is just an example, where sometimes your principles, your ethics, your morals have to come before the orders that you are receiving. Sometimes you have to disobey orders from your government, and especially if you're representing a government with which policies you don't agree, that might even be more difficult. And that's also something that we should be thinking about. So I think religion being a very personal subject, it has the utmost importance in international relations and in fostering peace.
Thank you, Joanna. Yes, of course. I was taking note, and I would like to highlight something that you mentioned. Okay, about principles, ethics, and how important it is to taking care of that. And sometimes you have to balance that, and how important is you. Of course, you can be the diplomatic, and it's personal relations, of course. But it's important, and to know the relation from the other, and to understand, I think in the negotiations, the timing, I think, creates another atmosphere. I think the respect and build relations. I think diplomacy, it's about building relationships and the trust. And I think it is possible if you truly know and respect other one that you have in the table. So, and where that relations came very important, not as a worshiping, because sometimes when we talk about relations, we only think in how you worshiping or where you are going to the church or not. But I think it's more general in diplomacy. We must take care of, because it's very important. And before I continue, I think you mentioned also face community response when some very accidents, humanitarian crisis, the faith-based organizations, they are in the front in a minute. They don't think that happened to my community or that happened. No, they respond whatever the relations they are. So it's very, very important. Him, we would like to know and to share how it's important to you, your religion affiliation, what role has to play in your life, or tell us, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. Actually, since the beginning, I always, as a Christian, I like to bridge always between religion and ethnic divide, especially in the Syrian conflict. So in the Syrian conflict, from the beginning, it was a call for freedom and democracy. Then it turned to be a sectarian conflict and tension. So this is when, and I take now from my colleague Joanna, when she said about ethics and values as a Christian, that we need to build bridges between conflict and try to solve the conflict. So in my work in Geneva, in every single event, I try always to bring people from diverse religions background, Syrian, of course, and to let them work together to prepare the event together and give them more opportunity to understand and respect each other. So in this one, we have, and I remember that we find that there is so much sharing principles between the parties. And this can be an entrance point to solve the problems. And we get a very powerful message when you bring everybody at the table. Remember, more people at the table from diverse ethnic groups, political, geographic, can be more beneficial at the table. So what I try to do with my colleagues to bring, of course, for me, the subject close to my heart are the women. So I always try to get as much women as I can to any event or any dialogue or any workshop. So I remember in the area formula, which I think Joanna knows about it because I think he's, actually he's a Brazilian ambassador Aria, who created this formula in the UN Security Council to bring this voice to the voiceless, like civil society, to talk in the UN Security Council about problems or crises. So I was preparing and organizing this session last June in 2022, and I make sure to have women at the panel from different religions, from different ethnic groups, talking about the disappeared people in their family or family members or friends. So in this panel, we included everybody, and the message was very strong that we need to stop the detention to everybody, and we need to work together to solve this problem. Remember, in the last week, there is a vote in the UN Security about approving a mechanism about these disappeared people in Syria, and which is the UN Security Council approved it. So I need also to talk here, and I'm sorry, I'm bringing lots of stories just to give you a live example how important faith and bringing grassroots level from multi-faith to the negotiation or to the diplomatic or to the political level is so important. I remember in a visit to Moscow in 2017 with the delegation, from my delegation, I went as a Christian Orthodox. I went also to the Minister of Religion in Moscow, and I was advocating to release the prisoners. And I remember somebody there asked me, why you Christian advocating for the freedom of people from different religion? Exactly what Ambassador Joanna mentioned. This is ethics and principle that we need to walk the talk. We need to, if we're a real Christian, we cannot just fight for our people. We need to fight for the oppressed, not only in Syria, around the world. So anyway, I remember one day in the US Congress, they asked me about what they can do to help the minority in Syria. My simple answer was, think about the majority of the Sunni who are paying the price, and then their safety is our safety. So we need to always think about the bigger picture about how to save the country in bringing everybody together. So here, I want to, of course, I want to also mention here important, it's about faith-based women mediators who are really playing now very important role in the local level, and bringing everything to the higher level. And we just finished a research, and hopefully we can share it with you later when it's by the next month, about the importance of the role of the faith women mediators in the local level, and how much they can bring, and the challenges they have. And of course, one of the challenges we can talk about here is the male domination, and how much we have to fight to have a role, and how much we have to advocate for our present. And this is also, we have to think how much is important for women to support women in this. And we're very grateful so far for having lots of international women colleagues and Syrian women who are supporting each other's to have a place and to have a voice in this conflict. Here also I need, if I have time, I don't know if I have time or not, to mention the different tracks in negotiation. You know, there is a track 1, 2, 3. And before they used to talk too much about track 1, then they brought track 1.5. Now we are a very strong believer that bringing grassroots level to the negotiation can be very important and very valuable. And in every single event, and especially in last year, when they have the UN humanitarian leaders urge to renew the authorization for the North Syria for cross-border lifeline, like humanitarian access. So there is 4 million civilians are in the Northwest stuck, and they might starve to death if we don't open those cross-border. I remember very much that the women get together and they wrote their recommendations. And this recommendation been distributed to the high level in New York and Geneva. And I remember this call saying, who wrote those recommendations? This is the women in the grassroots who get together and discuss it. And this is what we need. And us, we need to serve them. We need to bring their voice if they can't come, and to show how much is valuable their voice is. So this is, and of course, I don't have to mention here, and this is, I think, all my colleagues in this negotiation, like I know my colleagues in the Libyan case, or in the Palestinian-Israeli case, or in Yemeni case, we have always this problem of we don't have a place at the table. We don't, and the few women, they've been really, they don't have their enough space to express what they want. So we have these spoilers, and the spoilers always refuse to include us as stakeholders. And here we need to have this exercise. And I don't know, before I used to say, we don't take their permission. We ask their forgiveness after we include all the women. And it happened for us for many years to get women, and we don't ask for their permission. Then when they start like asking us, why did you bring all those women? We say, oh, sorry, we didn't know. And then now I can tell you, start having a norm that you cannot have a negotiation table or any political process without having women at the table. I'm going to stop here. I can see Daniela is telling me to.
Thank you. Thank you. No, indeed, you already mentioned something that we are going to discuss in the next part, but I would like to mention so much elements in common that you have mentioned, and you are alike because you always bring to the table social society, how important is to get involved. I think, and both of you have mentioned that the importance of build bridges between these two levels, high level of negotiations in diplomatic and in some high spheres, that sometimes how we connect these two spheres, local, and I think that's so important to keep in mind that, and how we can reach that. And women we have the power to do that. So that's so important. And I will like now to move to the last part, and we are going to get more technical about international relations if you want. But now, because of that, we want to know, and you already mentioned about track 1 and track 2 diplomacy. Sometimes we heard it and say, what they are talking about and what that means. And we are talking about 1.5 diplomacy. I think it's the way of diplomacy, searching different way to give results, because diplomacy can be not dynamic. No, I think it's a response to getting more dynamic. So I will wanted to hear you, Joanna, about how do you feel and how do you think about this track 1 and track 2? Is there any best of way to do that? How important is to mix up or not? And in general, we want to know about this. Then I will ask you a few questions, but I would like to explain this about track 1, track 2, and track 1.5. I would like to hear you both about this, and then we continue with the rest of the question. Please, Joanna.
Okay, so as you say, Daniela, this is quite technical. And so maybe I would start by explaining what this means. So track 1 diplomacy is when we're speaking about official diplomacy, the diplomacy that is performed by governments, so state-to-state diplomacy. Okay, this is what we speak about when we speak about track 1 diplomacy. Track 2 diplomacy is the unofficial diplomacy, the one between non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations, academics, experts, can be also done by universities. So everything that is below government level. Okay, so it can be even official when we do a big summit of the United Nations, let's say on women or on the environment. There are official governments, official diplomats, and then there are the civil society organizations that also contribute to the negotiation. And then there's track 1.5, as you were saying. That is what we call a sort of hybrid type of diplomacy that mixes official diplomats, official diplomacy, and unofficial diplomacy, and NGOs and civil society experts, academics, etc. So each of these 3 types of diplomacy has advantages and disadvantages, of course. So if you think about official diplomacy, government state-to-state diplomacy, it's stronger, it's more powerful, okay? But nowadays, in a globalized world, you know that no government that wants to be legitimatized in its decisions can go to a meeting, go to a negotiation without the support of its people. And that's where track 2 diplomacy is so important. So a government that goes to a negotiation has to have the support of the civil society, of the communities, depending on the theme, if it is the experts community, or if it's the interfaith community, or if it's the local community, okay? So the track 2 diplomacy is more flexible and more innovative, because when you are not connected to a government policy, you have more flexibility to be more creative, to think more out of the box solutions. Sometimes it's also possible that track 1 diplomats, they are not specialists of that particular theme or that particular local issue. Okay, so when civil society, local groups comes along, they have more knowledge of the situation, and so they can think of more creative solutions that weren't not necessarily on the table of the tools of the classic diplomatic negotiation tools. Okay, you have a territory. Everyone wants that territory, but maybe one group wants that territory because of economic issues, and the other group wants that territory because of religious issues. So knowing what exactly each group wants, not only I want that territory, knowing why they want. So having the deep knowledge of the reasons that are inside a negotiation or inside a conflict, will then help you to be creative and imaginative to produce solutions, okay? So this is why both tracks are so important when we are dealing, most of all, when we are dealing with a conflict, with people, with very sensitive issues of the people. My idea is that nowadays, it is impossible in the globalized world that we live, is impossible to go only try to solve conflict only with track one diplomacy, okay? This is not realistic, because now it's not only globalized world, but it's an interconnected world. You have social media, and one of the wonderful things, there are many bad things in social media, but one of the good things is that everyone has a voice. Everyone is able to speak its opinion. Okay, it can be a good opinion, a bad opinion, it doesn't matter. You can speak it. And if many people think like you, then your opinion will influence the policies that track one diplomats, track one politics are trying to enforce. Okay, see the Arab Spring. How did it start? What was the influence of the social media in the movement of the population, of the people in those countries fighting for democracy? For instance, it's just an example. So I do think that it is very important that we keep in mind that governments alone, without the legitimacy of and the support of the local communities of their people, they cannot enforce, they cannot fulfill any kind of compromise. That's my idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you. Yes, you have been so much clear about this, explaining this. It seems so technical, but when you explain with your own words, it's not so difficult. It's difficult of course, to work on it. But you have mentioned something very important, that the track 2 give the expertise, because as you mentioned, diplomatics or the high level or track 1, not always they have the completely knowledge that they need, the balance. Again, it must be a balance. So thank you. And the creative, you mentioned that we were talking about how women can bring creativity to the solutions, and we have that. We are used to be playing in a lot of roles in our life, and I think that's our goal. We can bring that. We are creative, naturally more creative. It's just like that. So Hind, you already mentioned about this track 1, track 2, track 1.5. I would like you to please.
I need to add one thing. First of all, thank you, Joanna. You explained it very well. And I need now to add one thing, and this is learned from Interpeace, because part of, they talk about track 1 and 2, exactly as Joanna said, and there is now track 3, which is the very grassroots level, and they call it now a track 6. So you cannot go to any negotiation if you cannot include, they call it track 6, which is 1 and 2, which Joanna mentioned, and 3. Of course, 1 are the influential politicians, the big talk. Then Joanna mentioned the flexibility, the out-of-the-box creativities with the track 2, and then the real things. What is the people really need in the grassroots? And I can give you an example in the transitional justice. So when you talk about transitional justice, about the politician, they have their own view, because the transitional justice can be very critical and very problematic for some of the armed group who are negotiating, or a big politician. Then they will be coming the flexible, the technical, the big organization who are doing all this transitional justice to give their advice. But then you go back to the grassroots and tell them how important is this for you and why you want to do it. And this is an example, but in the track 6, if you remember the case of Somalia before, when they have this fisheries, and how they saved millions of dollars because they included those fishermen from Somalia to tell them exactly what is the problem. So when we talk about including track 1 and 2 and 3, this is where you can guarantee that, as Joanna said, that we can get to a good solution. So track 3 can be women from the refugee camps, from the IDP camps, women who are really suffering. They know exactly what is the problem is, because we can be sitting in our ivory tower thinking about big solution and discussing, but then the people on the ground, they can tell you, we have a pain. And if you talk today about people who are really suffering, they need to have a solution. They're not the Lord of War. They want this war to continue. So we need to listen to them. And this is where I can agree 100% with Joanna about track 1 and 2. And we can add grassroots, especially women and youth here, how important to listen to their voice and get them all together and having their conscience and their values and their ethic to pressure those politicians and the Lord of Wars, who they have the #1 interest to keep this war continuing because of many reasons. So I'm going to stop here.
Sorry, now, thank you. Yes, you mentioned also youth, women youth. They're so important, because if we talk about grassroots, we are talking about youth. And I thank you for bringing it, as same as you always keep mentions civil society. I think when we talk about grassroots, it's about that we are talking, and go back to the grassroots. I think, of course, it's important. Track 1 is needed because it's the way how countries related among them. It's expected to be like that, but I think nowadays, and I think it's in a correct way, this change is about track diplomacy 1, 2, 3, and so on, is it's a search to be more flexible, more practical, because solutions, they are not reaching solutions if they stay only in one level. The solutions, they are not become. So it's so important that you have mentioned. So I would like to, we are running time. The three of us, we love to talk, I must say. But yes, thank you for that. So I will like to before we, I would like to answer you, to ask you about how women make the shift from local peace building. How do they do this? Okay, I'm working in local level. How can I do this, that shift, no? And how to moving forward? It's just very brief, if you can, in a line.
Very briefly, Daniela, because I'm watching your time.
Thank you.
But I think that what Hind said, youth and women youth, okay? So 3 years ago, I started to teach at the university. I teach the diplomatic practice, and that's the way. So training, you have to train, okay? Wherever you are in the world, you have to study. You have to, if it's hard, it's hard. Maybe you go study and you have to have a job in order to be able to pay for your studies. Do it, engage, make yourself known. So you're a woman, you're a young woman, you will have to work 2 or 3 times more than a boy. You will have to, but you will be able to make a difference, okay? This is not, the times we live are considerably better than our times, okay? So when I was young, there was 1 bachelor course and no opportunities out in international relations outside diplomacy, track 1 diplomacy. Nowadays, there are NGOs, there are international organizations, there are the United Nations always looking for trainees. Get yourself out there. Use the social networks. use to ask for information, to get information, to see who are the actors here where I can engage. And engage with them, if you only can through Facebook or Instagram or whatever, do it that way, but make yourself known and don't be afraid, and study a lot. Okay, that would be really my
Thank you.
My
yes,
advice.
of course. As you say, nowadays there's much more opportunity with social media. We have to pay attention and to be active. So him.
Yeah.
How about you?
I just want to add of what Johanna said. Actually, in 2016, when we were fighting to increase women at the negotiation, I remember this big shot guy look at me and say, do we have in Syria qualified women can be negotiators? I remember I look at him and I gave myself this promise, wait and see. Started next day to prepare these big programs in mediation and negotiation in public. Very proud today we have 1,800 women qualified to be there. And I just saw some of our students are here watching and very proud. They are now part of they go to the UN to speak. They are involved in civil society, in election, in transitional justice. I always tell my students, knowledge is power. The more you know, the more you have this power, and always say, prepare, prepare, prepare. If they need to prepare once, our male colleagues, you have to prepare 10 times more, because we need to be ready to the table. And I don't want to listen to this guy telling me again, you don't have a qualified woman in Syria. I tell him, we have 1,800 and there is more to come. Thank you.
Thank you to you. It's so inspired words to both of you. I want you to thank you for that, because sometimes we needed that, because in the daily routine, we are just we don't know how we can do the shift on if inside we say I'm in the correct path or I'm doing the correct things, but that's so important to you to share that too, and how important it is to know. Is the knowledge. It's we need preparations, and we have to study more. To anyone tell us you don't have the capacity to, is enough. I think we just run out of that time. We don't want that anymore. So very, very thank you for that. Okay, now I will ask about, I want again the Slido screen, because we were asking the audience do you aspire to making a shift. We were talking about this, and I would like to know about this. Can we see the Slido about this? If I think the audience will participate it. So until that happens, don't worry, I will. Okay, here it is. Here it is. Do you aspire to make a shift in your work? Okay, okay. We don't know. It's no need to question anything. So I think you have done so many clues to do that, how to do that. So please continue with this to participate in our Slido. And in the meantime, I would like to, well, we are almost finished, but I want in these occasions to conclude. We already have been talking about this, and probably I would like to, if she's available, to Belen, to Ambassador Alfaro, if she wants to join us in this the last minutes, and about the recommendations for women. You already mentioned that, but the tips how to do that, to how to get involved. It will be interesting if you want to add some more advice you already mentioned. If you wanted to share with that some recommendations for that girls and young women that want to do the shift of our local to international level. We already mentioned educations. You have to study. You have to be attentive to opportunities. What you can add to that, please?
Yes, well, I think that's very important. As you have said, education, training to be the best. Women have to be the best because, they are required more. You have to study more, you have to be better trained, more studies. So this is very important. And then also women have to keep contacts. Usually women don't keep contacts. This is also very important. So to be the best with the best studies, the best trained, and also it's very important for women to keep contacts. Men do that, but women do this less. And then so it's important also to keep contacts, to be in networks. And you can, what I can say, that women are the best and that they can. So also maybe the mind, you have to be sure, completely convinced that women are very good, that they can do everything, and that they are very good, and to be very sure of that, very positive. So that's it.
Thank you, Ambassador, thank you. And now I want to welcome, and we are so honored. I can see that His Excellency Deputy Secretary General Antonio de Almeida Ribeiro has joined the webinar. Thank you for joining us. It's really an honor, and I would like you to invite you to make a few closing remarks. Please, Ambassador, His Excellency, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Daniela. Dear colleagues and dear friends, I'm delighted to deliver these remarks at the closing of this webinar, which celebrates and recognizes women's voices and contributions in the field of diplomacy. At the outset, I would like to thank the inspiring women leaders that participated as speakers today, namely Ambassador Belén Alfaro, responsible at the Spanish Ministry for Foreign Affairs for KAICIID and former ambassador to Qatar, Ambassador Betty Bigom, a prominent politician and diplomat from Uganda that unfortunately could not join us, but I still would like to greet her. My dear colleague Joana Gaspar, currently president of the Portuguese Diplomats Union Association, a very important person in my ministry. Mrs. Hind Kabawat, who told us her amazing personal and professional experience to promote peace in Syria, and Daniela Chavez, of course, who have actively proven the critical role women play in diplomacy, peace building, and development. I have to say, Daniela, that when I was ambassador to Buenos Aires, I visited Salta many times. It's one of the most amazing places where I have been in my life. Beautiful province, beautiful people, and an amazing landscape. Unique, I think, in many parts. Thank you so much for your hospitality. So I would particularly wish to thank Elizabeth Perks, who brought us here today as manager of the Women's Voices series, as well as my KAICIID colleagues from events, communications, and of course, our translators, and all of you that joined us online today. At KAICIID, we do believe that change begins within, and unlike other organizations, we have a high percentage of women staff members, as nearly more than half of our staff are women. Our aim is indeed to transform and mainstream women empowerment within our structure and programs. In fact, we consider vital to create space at the table for representatives from every religion, tradition, culture, identity, and background. We prioritize the development of mechanisms that enable women's participation. For example, KAICIID has launched the She for Dialogue, a women's empowerment project currently working with women from Iraq, Egypt, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, and Syria to tackle relevant topics as gender mainstreaming in the field of interreligious dialogue and ways in which identity intersects with religion, ethnicity, culture, and nationality. And also the Dialogue City Southeast Asia Conference held in Bangkok last May, in which I had the honor to represent KAICIID's leadership, with the aim to create a space for government officials, religious and interreligious leaders, practitioners, including women and youth, and experts to convene regionally and assess how to enhance the culture of dialogue in their respective cities. Dear participants, KAICIID is member of international platforms and working groups advocating for women empowerment, including the United Nations Multi-Faith Advisory Council and the International Partnership on Religion in Development. We consider that women participation is a requirement for peaceful, prosperous, and inclusive societies. Actors should also understand the revolutionary and positive ideal that underpins development, that for the first time in human history, all human beings can aspire to develop their true potential, and that this ideal carries with a new ethical imperative to translate that aspiration into reality. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development envisions, and I quote, a world of universal respect for human rights and human dignity, in which every woman and girl enjoys full gender equality and all legal, social, and economic barriers to their empowerment have been removed, unquote. Gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls are central to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and all 17 of the Sustainable Development Goals, gender equality is reflected in 45 targets and 54 gender-specific indicators of the SDGs. Achieving these targets and closing the gender gaps will therefore create a multiplier effect across all SDGs and accelerate their achievement. I close today with the hope that you will leave this webinar inspired to explore creative ideas for promoting pluralism, equality, advancing the cause of interfaith dialogue, tackling hate speech and discrimination, and supporting practices and legislation that increases women's active participation. I took good note about what Joana Gaspar said in her last intervention, and that's why I encourage the audience to consider joining KAICIID's Fellows Program or proposing a community dialogue project through our microgrant programs. I can assure that we will be delighted at KAICIID to working with you all in the future. Lastly, I invite you all to disseminate the outcomes of this webinar and have a look in previous versions available on a dedicated section on KAICIID's website, as all webinars are available to the audience, in particular those focusing on women's voices. I thank you for your attention and for inviting me to close this webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you to you. Thank you. Your contribution has been excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we ran out of the time. I just want to this, how happy I am. Really, I want to thank you to all. I think this webinar will help a lot. It was be enlightening, so insightful. I want to thank you for sharing from the bottom of your heart, because you have been so generous, and I think the audience can feel it. So I would like to thank our speakers, and especially the audience, and of course the participants of being part of this event. Thank you to the interpreters. I hope we don't have any troubles, but sorry if get you in some trouble, but thank you. And please, we hope to see you on the next one. And of course, keep an eye on our social media. Join KAICIID. It's a wonderful experience. And I want to thank you to the team, to Tanenbaum, to KAICIID, and thank you for this experience. Thank you very much. See you in the next webinar.